If you clicked on this video, you're probably poor, lazy, or both. How do I know this? Well, if you weren't lazy, then you wouldn't be thinking about VRoid instead of Blender, and if you weren't poor, then you would have just commissioned someone to make a 3D model for you instead of trying to make one yourself. But don't worry, you broke, lazy bastard, because I'm just like you. Unfortunately for me, I am more broke than I am lazy, which means that I already made my own 3D model in Blender a couple months ago, which took way longer than it should have. And on the day I debuted my model, my friend Starcaster had made this model in the time span of an evening using something called VRoid. Now, some of you might be asking, Nova, what the fuck is VRoid? We're gonna find out today, because I had two questions. How hard is it to make a VRoid model myself as a complete beginner? And how will it compare to the 3D model I made of myself in Blender? I feel like it will be an interesting comparison because when I made my 3D model, it was the first thing I ever made in Blender ever. And now I'm making my first thing I ever made in VRoid Studio. Ever. But before we start, I had 3 rules for this video. The first rule was imposed on me by my accountant, which was that I was not allowed to spend any money. The reason I started learning Blender in the first place was because I was broke AF and I didn't have any money to commission someone for a 3D model. And I know what you're gonna say. Nova, you could have just stolen money from a homeless person to pay for that stuff. And while that is entirely legal, it doesn't really seem like an ethical thing to do more than once a month. Anyway, since I made my Blender model without spending any money, I thought it would only be fair to do the same thing for VRoid. And for goal number 3, the goal is to get my 3D model as close to my 2D design as possible, since that was the goal for my Blender model as well, and the whole reason I even wanted a custom model in the first place. Cause like, if I just end up looking like any other average Joe, then what's the point? So let's get started. I'm gonna go in order of what caused me the least to the most trouble, starting with the least. The first step in creating a VRoid model is very similar to Blender. You have to go to the website and hit the download button. Fucking nailed it. Most of your basic customization in VRoid is done through these sliders in the menu. It's a lot like creating a Sims avatar, I think. I don't know, I haven't played Sims since like 2013. Some of the sliders are very limiting, especially when it comes to deforming the body or the ears. I couldn't really get my ears to look exactly the way I wanted. And as for the body controls, you can basically just make your boobs bigger, which is cool, and your hips wider, which really comes in clutch for childbirth, I guess. But I couldn't really figure out how to accurately represent the size of my massive dump truck. And that's kind of sad. You can however mess with the vertical proportions quite easily, like making your legs longer and your torso shorter and stuff like that. When it came to customizing the hair, there were a bunch of presets I could choose from, and I happened to find one that was pretty close to what I was looking for as far as shape goes. There is a way to make custom hair in VRoid by using these cone-like things and creating hair like that, but just like the Bogdanov brothers plastic surgeon, I couldn't really find a way to make it look good. Honestly, I found it easier to make custom strands of hair in Blender instead of VRoid, but that just might be because I'm a special kind of dumb. Now the next part of model creation was a lot like having an erection after getting kicked out of a White Castle, because now that I'm done fucking around with sliders, it got a bit harder. You probably didn't notice because you were staring at my boobs this entire time, but I do have heterochromia in my eyes, and unfortunately there's no way I can change that by using one of those silly little sliders, so I had to start texture painting. Now I don't really have any artistic ability, but fortunately I could just paint over the base of an existing eye in the areas that I wanted to be purple, which was most of the eye, and now that I think about it, it would have made a lot more sense to just have the base be purple and paint the yellow bits in instead. Anyway, VRoid is very limiting with the tools that it gives you to paint your model. You only have like 3 brushes and they're alright. They get the job done, but I wouldn't want to paint the Mona Lisa with them, you know? Well, to be fair, I have no desire to paint the Mona Lisa anyway, but that's beside the point. Comparing texture painting in VRoid to Blender is a lot like comparing apples to pineapples, because they're both things that are much improved by using a pen, but my mouse did suffice for the little amount of texture painting that I did have to do. I added the yellow bits to the hair as well, and after that I moved on to what caused me the most trouble. Now, as you can see, due to Twitch TOS, my 2D model has an outfit, and unfortunately VRoid doesn't have that exact same outfit as a preset. Oh no, who saw that coming? Also, according to Twitch TOS, a VRchat model doesn't technically require an outfit, but I want one anyway. So I went to this website called Boost where you can download 3D assets and maybe other stuff, I don't know. But I had 2 major problems. A lot of the 3D assets were not created for VRoid, which already massively narrowed down the amount of assets that I could use. And the bigger issue was my rule about not spending any money. The problem is that most people who create 3D assets don't make them out of the goodness of their heart or because the Bible told them to, but instead because they want to make money off of the thing that they created, like any reasonable person would. This meant that there were only a handful of 3D assets that I could use, which which was a problem because not only did I still need an outfit that looked like mine, but I was also still missing horns. For the horns I only found 2 that somewhat looked like mine and met the aforementioned requirements, and one of them was attached to hair, which meant that I ended up going for pretty much the only option I had that didn't require me to spend money or change my hairstyle. I managed to get the horns looking like this by texture painting them, which was close enough. But then I came across a VRoid video of somebody making horns out of hair by using those weird cone things I mentioned earlier, and I decided to give that a shot, and it turned out alright. I tried to remove the horns I added earlier, but I couldn't remember where in the menu I added them, so I spent like 5 minutes clicking through every menu in VRoid until I found them. If there's an easier way to find out where you placed your assets in VRoid, please don't let me know in the comments because I'm never using VRoid again anyway, and I really don't want to feel like even more of an idiot. For the outfit I couldn't find a pair of free thigh-high boots, so I decided to use these boots instead and add thigh-highs underneath them and just paint the laces yellow. I used the shorts from this VRoid preset and removed the belt, and I also added this bunny girl suit underneath it and removed all the unnecessary nonsense that came with it. I also added this choker and painted the purple belt onto the shorts. I also tried making these straps that I have around my outfit, but it just ended up looking like body paint, so I decided not to bother. I also tried adding the straps and stuff I have on my 2D model by using a t-shirt preset. I'm removing most of the shirt and making straps out of it, but it turns out that when you add a shirt to a VRoid model, it removes the torso underneath the shirt for optimization, so that didn't really work. The biggest problem, however, was the jewelry. I couldn't find any ear piercings that I could add to my model, and I certainly wasn't going to find a chain like the one I have that connects my ear piercing to my fang, so this is about where I decided to call it. It took me about 4 hours to make this model, which is a lot faster than it took me to make one in Blender. Now obviously this isn't the best 3D model in the world, it probably isn't even in the top 5, but it's as good as I could get it for now without spending any money, and since the goal was to capture my likeness, I feel like I accomplished that to the best of my ability. Now real quick, before I compare the final result to the Blender model, I would really appreciate if you considered hitting the like button, because it helps out a lot. Anyway, so how does the VRoid model compare to the one I made in Blender? First off, the looks. While the two models are stylistically very different, I think any person with somewhat functional eyes would say that the VRoid model looks better. Considering that all the presets were made by people who actually know what they're doing, that's not a surprise. It also comes with a bunch of expressions, and the way the body contours is obviously a lot better because I didn't have to worry about stuff like weight painting and all that other nonsense I had to do in Blender. Then as for accuracy, considering that everything on my Blender model is custom modeled, I could make it look exactly how I wanted, so obviously it's gonna look a lot closer to the way my 2D model looks in terms of body shape, outfit and facial features. The VRoid model is heavily lacking in the ass department, and I just generally couldn't make it as curvy as I would have liked to. Also the fact that many parts of my outfit are missing due to them either being paywalled or non-existent kinda sucks. This problem can kinda be circumvented by spending money or not being as picky as I am, but still. Then third, quality. One major issue I had with Blender is that my model was made up of about 3 million triangles, which is fucking insane. For reference, the upper limit in VRchat is about 70,000. This effectively means that my model is very intense to run on PC and impossible to run on any standalone VR headset natively. This also means that most users in VRchat can't see my model because it will probably crash their PC. Fortunately for me, that isn't an issue because I have a pretty decent PC, so I can run the model, so it doesn't really matter to me. The VRoid model is a lot better optimized, which means that I don't have any problems using it in VRchat, but it is also a lot lower poly. When I zoom in on the model from certain angles, you can really tell how angular the shapes on the body are. Like, look at this. This is some Pyramids of Giza type shit. Since I intend to use my 3D model for more than just VRchat, it is nice to have the ability to zoom in without looking like the original Tomb Raider. Now for the final question. Am I an idiot for wasting my time creating a Blender model, or is VRoid Studio a hunk of garbage that only lazy peasants use? And the answer is neither, really. It completely depends on what you want to use your 3D model for and how much time and money you want to invest into it. I personally won't be using my VRoid model for anything as I have no use for it, but it would have been a pretty decent alternative if I hadn't decided to go the Blender route. Obviously you can make the model look a lot better by investing more time into texture painting, but I'm not an artist, so there wasn't really much I could do in that department. And if you're not as broke as I am and willing to pay a couple of dollars, there are a bunch of cool assets you can get pretty easily to use on your VRoid model, and I did kinda have fun making it, just messing around with the sliders and stuff. And if you're curious to see how hard it is to make a Blender model as a complete beginner, you can check out the video I made here. It's also linked in the description down below. And if you didn't hate this video, hit the like button, follow me on Twitch, and comment down below which 3D model you think turned out better. Okay, bye!